Did you give him that 20?
Good morning, everyone. I hope that all have stumbled through our technical difficulties this morning, and we're still working out a few details on this end, but we're a few minutes after starting time. I guess we can start initially with a roll call.
I'll have to do it from here. Are you up?
I am
Okay, Sam Angel,
here.
Ryan England, Steve Bloom. You do?
Yeah.
Steve Balloon. Kyle Baltz.
Here.
Can't hear any of them.
Can you hear me?
Alan Bedell,
Here. Here. Here.
Will Brewer,
I'm here.
ask Mr. Bedell to speak.
They do. Run a Zoom meeting.
They'll confirm they can hear you.
Yeah, they're going down there clicking down the. Mr. Allen, are you with us?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Will Brewer,
I'm here.
Brent Butler, Ronald Kavanaugh. You saw him? Jerry Christie,
Here.
Marcus Creasy, Ray Dillon, Damon Helton, Jennifer James, Chris Hoffman,
Here.
Bruce Leggett, Frank Lisco,
Here.
Matthew Marsh, Landon Poole, Jamie Turner, Sam Whitaker, Robbie Beavis, Dr. Butler,
Here for Dr. Latour, Bud Kennedy.
Dr. Cochran, Dr. Hack,
Here.
Dr. Killingsworth, Dr. Miller, Dr. Toppy, Showing none.
I think some of those ones are on there too, so I think we got it.
Okay.
And you can go back and review.
Sam, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Would y'all consider just reading back the names that you had present so that we can know if if we transmitted or not?
He is going to go back and review the list of numbers of the people that have come in.
Okay.
You're listed on a profile here on the side, so she's going to go back and confirm those.
10-4.
Again, we apologize for the technical difficulties. It seems like that the internet went down totally in Central Arkansas for a moment. Any guests with us today? If so, please introduce yourself. Not hearing any. I would move on to item number 4 of today's agenda, minutes from last month's meeting, as well as the August 5th meeting. With no correction.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Would that motion include both?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I have a motion for both. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second.
Mr. Frank, I have you down for a second. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, like sign. Okay. Minutes from August 5th and November 4th have been passed. Moving on down the agenda to item number 5. If John Lewis is with us today, we'll turn it over to John.
John Lewis is here. Let's see if John Lewis can share his screen. Okay, so we're going to look, if you can hear me okay, I'm going to look back a little bit at last year, kind of where we ended and where we're headed from here. We kind of do this at the end of each year just to kind of, review. But if you look at your screen there, this is precipitation in 2020. It was another wet year. It's that plus minus column we're really focused on, all pluses from north to south. Some really big pluses there, 19 inches above average at Texarkana, 16 above average at Fort Smith. Not so much in the northwest, Fayetteville a little less than 2 inches above average, and the same in the east. So the north and east, there were some drier spots, but still wet overall. 11th wettest year on record. Statewide average was 63.43, which is at the bottom of the screen. Here it is graphically, a lot of red there. Typically in Arkansas, you get about 50 inches a year, and we were well above that in a lot of areas. That pink area is over 70 that you see from, central into western Arkansas. And the big winner last year was is a little station that's 12.9 northwest of Mena, just over 100 inches of rain last year. So if you look from Arkansas into the east into the mid-Atlantic, that's the wettest part of the country. Breaking it down month by month, we had a couple of below average
And I've
months
got
in
connections.
July
I don't know how I'm trying to
by just a little bit.
search that. I should have searched his name.
Below
But
average
anyways,
month in
that's the only
November.
two that I've got.
Very dry in November, getting some
Remote
feedback
connection.
there.
And my thing would be like,
But by and large, most months wet, at least 5 months there, 2 inches above average
one account that has a check card.
in 5 of those months. So a very wet year.
It's about my only two things.
Joe Fox will tell you that it's been very unusual the last 3 years. Very, very little in the
Potentially.
as far as fires across the state, and probably get into that later. But this is the 3rd straight year where the precipitation was at least 10 above average. 2018, 2019, and 2020. I just missed the top 10 this year as far as top 10 wettest, but the other 2 years did make the list. So just unprecedented rainfall.
John, can I interrupt you for just a second?
Yes.
Members, if y'all would, please mute if you're not questioning or making a comment. We're getting a tremendous amount of feedback from the members that are unmuted. Turn it back over to you, John.
It's pretty quiet. Yeah, it's pretty quiet. So again, very wet, and it's been very wet the last 3 years, as you can see on the screen. When is the pattern going to break? As far as drought, really not a lot of problems around here. A little bit of dryness across the central United States, but by far the worst problems are out west. They had a lot of forest fires in the western United States last year. A lot of drought issues continue and have been doing so through the winter, and will probably continue doing so through the spring. As far as the AO, we visit this every once in a while. This is the Arctic Oscillation Index. Generally, when you look at positive values of the AO, you look for mild weather, and then when it turns negative, you tend to get colder. Well, we did have a very mild November with temperatures at least 4 degrees above average across the state. It was one of the warmest months we had last year as far as departures from normal. But when you get into December and January, I wouldn't say it was real cold around here based on what you see on the AO. As a matter of fact, across the United States, from December into January, it's been fairly mild, especially up in the north where it's supposed to be a cold winter, La Nina, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We're in the La Nina pattern. And when you have La Nina across the southern United States, it is mild, and that's what we've seen here. But up north, it's supposed to be colder, and we haven't seen that at all. Well above average temperatures from Montana into the Dakotas. One of the big reasons for that is the pattern is there to get colder, but the big polar vortex that usually brings us that cold air has been perched in its usual area up in the North Pole and just hasn't moved. So the west to east flow across Canada has indeed slowed down, which would allow that cold air to move this way, but it just hasn't. So as of December 26th on the left, it hadn't moved, but as we go through time on January 5th, and then on January 15th on the far right, United States is toward the bottom of the globe there. You see it starting to seep there into the northeast. And I believe we're going to see a lot more of that heading into February. And if you look at the latest forecast, some of the coldest air we've seen all winter is headed this way. So the pattern has bared out. The Puxatawny Phil came out of his hole yesterday, saw a shadow, and that means 6 more weeks of winter. And that would seem to go along with the latest forecast. And it's going to get really cold next week. I'm just going to let you know that now. And we do have chances of snow and ice in the forecast. Here's that La Nina pattern. If you go to the far left on that graphic, we start in October, November, December of 2020. And then as we go to the right, on the far right is September, October, November 2021. So the fall of this year. And through time, we stay La Nina for a little while heading through the spring, but by the time you get into the summer and especially the early fall, we're in neutral territory, which is between El Nino and La Nina. Well, with the La Nina pattern, again, in the winter, you would look for warmer than average conditions in our part of the country. And you would also look for drier than normal weather in the southern United States. And we've seen that lately. So La Nina's worked out really well here. Another thing that we look for with La Nina, though, is severe weather. And the 3 most active years on record, which would be 99, 2008, and 2011 in Arkansas anyway, were La Nina years. A lot of tornadoes in those years, the most recent being 2011. And 2011 was a La Nina year very similar to this year, where we had a lot of cold air come in early in the year, and we're looking for that in February. We had a lot of snow in the early part of 2011. And then by the time we hit April and May, all of that was gone, and the tornadoes and the hail and the damaging winds and the rain went nuts in April and May. Not necessarily looking for a repeat of that this year, but I would fully expect to see it get more active once this cold air is gone. When you get as cold as we're going to get here in the next couple of weeks, that tends to shut down the severe weather season, which is good. But I don't think we're out of the woods, and I think by the time we get into March and April, maybe early May, you're going to see an active period. As far as that precipitation, this would be for February, March, and April. This is looking at the NMME, which takes about 6 models and averages them together. Below average rainfall across the Gulf Coast and also in the same areas where they've had drought in the western United States. But a very typical La Nina pattern there from the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes on toward Arkansas with above average precipitation. And that's kind of what we're going to look at here in the next 3 months. So dry now, I think we're going to get into an active period. But by the time you get into later spring, early summer, look at that below average area that kind of creeps to the north over Arkansas. I think we dry out when we get into that time frame, and I think we're looking for probably a hotter than average summer because of it. Could be even looking at some drought conditions across the state as we head into those months and especially into the summer. So if you're going to put this into forecast form, at least in the short term, cold air coming, no doubt about that. This month could last a little bit into March, likely coming with chances of snow and ice. But I would expect to see with the La Nina pattern, and probably the AO will turn around and go positive. Not be surprised if we get very active sometime March and April, maybe early May, areas of heavy rain. It's just something that comes with La Nina, and especially a moderate to strong La Nina, which is what we have now. And long range models are showing kind of a drying out period as we head later into the spring and into the summer. Could lead to drought and a hotter than usual summer. Again, that's very, very La Nina. This is our website. If you ever want to visit there, Google National Weather Service Little Rock. And if anybody has any questions, I'll take those now.
Any questions of John? John, we're having a few folks that may reach back out to you after the meeting. We're still having some connectivity issues.
You're fine. Yeah, and if you have a question now or you think of one later, my email address is there too. So send me an email anytime. Be glad to answer any of those.
Thank you very, very much for your presentation this morning.
Yes, sir.
Good one. Okay, item number 6. Year-end crop and livestock update. Mr. Eugene, you with us?
Morning, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, Ray.
Hey, got that one technical challenge out of the way then. So let's see if we can share screen. I'm one of those people that, you get more than 3 pedals on the floor. That's all you need, just gas, brake, and clutch. And we all know that the brake is a bit optional. So let's see if we can get this to work here. Share. Let me move a few things around, do some shuffling. Can you see my screen, sir?
Yes, sir. We have you.
Awesome, awesome. Hey, first I want to thank Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, the board members for giving us the opportunity to come on, visit with everybody, talk a little bit about the 2020 this past year. We'll look at some crop, poultry, and livestock highlights, and I certainly use the term highlights in a generality for sure. Appreciate Mr. John going first. He kind of filled in some information, some of his U.S. maps. We'll see when we look at some of our crop maps, some similarities there in where things happened. But I do want to say here at NASS, we did have to adapt our environment a little bit based on conditions. But I am proud to say that all the reports that were scheduled to go out did so. We did make some adjustments on our data collection due to the safety and concerns for our farmers and ranchers across the state, as well as our field enumerators. We did temporarily suspend any field face-to-face interviews. So all of our interviews were done mail, through our online secure system, or through telephone. So let's go ahead and we'll jump into this. Got a lot of slides. We'll get through them real quick. We'll talk about the year-end survey. Our big survey is in December for the major row crops. This map will just show some of the sample sizes. For the state of Arkansas, we surveyed almost 2,000 farmers and ranchers at the end of the year to derive our major crops. Looking at the crops, this map shows the principal crops planted, major row crops. It also does include hay. I wanted to highlight this because Arkansas, we did show a 4% jump from the previous year, as John mentioned. 19 was awfully wet. 20, we started out the same way. Our planning, again, in generalities, was maybe 3 to 4 weeks behind in certain areas, some a little bit farther. Also did want to highlight out, looking at FSA data in 19, Arkansas, we had about 1.4 million acres that were prevented planting. In 2020, that number did come down, but it was still at almost 1.1 million acres that were in prevent plant. If we go back to 2014 through 2018, the average in the state for prevent planting was about 460,000 acres. So certainly, as John mentioned, 2020 followed in the footsteps of 2019 weather-wise. This table shows Arkansas and U.S. some of the major crops. Did want to mention that Arkansas, we saw an increase in acreage in soybeans, rice, and peanuts. We did see less acreage in corn and cotton. Overall, our production levels increased for peanuts, all rice, but most of that was in long. We did see a pullback in our medium grain production, and also we saw an increased production in soybeans as well. Really, the yields in the state as we went through the growing season, if we look 2020 compared to 2019, basically all of our yields increased on the major crops with just the exception of peanuts and hay. Want to show some trend lines looking at U.S. Arkansas, we'll look at corn first. Arkansas yield came in at 184. At the U.S. level, we were at 172, where we were certainly above the national average there. And this trend line shows the last 30 years at the U.S. level of where our corn yields have moved. Looking at corn across the states, Arkansas, we were one of the higher yielding corn states in the South. I did want to highlight Iowa. We did see a reduction there, and that was basically because the derecho, hopefully, John, I pronounced that right, in August, did have an impact certainly on corn yields, which also affected U.S. production, as Iowa being one of the major corn states. Speaking of production, for 2020, we came in at 14.2 billion bushels in the U.S. That would be the 5th highest on record, a little bit better than we were last year. Looking at this chart, I wanted to show some of the national level monthly reports that NASS puts out through the growing season from August through November. And what we're showing here is the red shows the national NASS estimate, and the blue lines or the blue dots show industry prognostications from some of the major players. So we can certainly see as we got toward the end of the year on corn, the final numbers from our farmers came in much lower than some expectations. Price wise, again, this chart just wanted to show where we've been and where we're at. This shows our monthly prices from 2010 to 2020. We can certainly see from the summer, we have seen that continue to grow. The December U.S. national average price for corn was at $3.97 a bushel. Soybeans, we'll jump into those real quick. Again, showing the same thing. Arkansas, we were at 50 bushels to the acre, up slightly from last year's 49 bushels. We're a little bit above the trend line at the national level. The national level estimate came in at 50.2 bushels per acre. State by state, and the states in blue do show the increase. The states in the reddish type color, rust colored, are those that showed a decline. And as I mentioned, Arkansas, we did see a 2% increase in our yield from previous year. Again, Iowa, some weather issues there with the wind event did have an impact. Production at the U.S. level, this again, the 4th highest on record at 4.14 billion bushels. Up quite a bit from last year. And again, there was that increase in acreage due to the issues that the upper Midwest had weather-wise in 2019. Again, same chart as I showed on corn. The red dot signifies the NASS estimate through the growing season through our monthly crop production reports. The blue, again, are just the prognostications from some of the players. So you can see at the end, we tend to be a little bit on the lower level on the production side from where some of the guesses were. Again, showing the chart for prices over time, where we've been, where we're at. 2020, again, we've seen that increase. In December, the U.S. Average price received was $10.50 a bushel. Cotton, looking at cotton, national average was $8.25. Arkansas, we're sitting at a record at 1,200 pounds to the acre. Certainly the U.S. level is weighed heavily by Texas, and we'll take a look at that on the map here shortly. You can see the southeast. John, we had all those weather events that went through, certainly impacted our cotton crop in the southeast. What were there, 6 or 7 landfalls in that area with hurricanes, so they certainly did have an impact. One of the blessings that we had here in the state, and I know with Hurricane Laura that came through, early indications, where things were going to even be really bad here. So we certainly, for the most part of the state, lucked out of that weather event. On the production side, again, production down. Texas did have the early freeze, the early frost that hit them a little bit. But at 15 million bales, 480 pound equivalent bales is certainly down from where we've been the last several years. Again, price-wise, where we've been, where we're at, if you look at the U.S. cotton, the December price received was at 65.6 cents per pound. Again, it's showing a little bit of an increase from early in the year. Rice, let's take a look at that. The U.S. at 76.19, Arkansas at 7,500. We were up about a half a bushel from last year. Again, the U.S. Average yield is weighed heavily by Arkansas being the major producing state in the nation. State by state, basically we saw all with an increase, a little bit of a drop in Missouri. That equates, that poundage at 7,500 pounds will equate to about 166 2/3 of a bushel. Again, up about a half a bushel from last year. Total production in the U.S., we were at 228 million hundredweight, up from last year. Again, that's primarily on Arkansas with the increase in acreage. The price chart here, I'm going to show the all rice, which is in blue, the long grain average price in the rust colored. The all price was at $13.50 in December. The long grain was at $12.30. And again, that's a U.S. average. Winter wheat. December, we did survey farmers for wheat that they is seeded. In Arkansas, we were up 24% from the 145 last year to 180. Did want to highlight the top 5 states of Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Colorado, and Washington. They basically account for 77% of the U.S. Wheat winter seedings. State by state, again, just a comparison of looking where we're at. The blue shows states that showed increases. The red, rust-colored show states that showed decline. Again, Arkansas, right now we're showing about a 24% jump from last year at 180,000 acres seeded. Industry expectations on the wheat planting. We are a little bit on the high side, but within the range of where a lot of the industry expectations were. Looking at prices, the December U.S. price was $5.57 a bushel. So again, we're showing that slight increase. Real quick, hay stocks. Arkansas, we've got 1.8 million tons of hay on storage as of December 1. That's down from 2 million last year. A lot of that goes in, again, to that production issues we had this year with rainfall, the sporadic rainfall, a little bit lower yield, but certainly wanted to show that carry in for hay. Again, they're just looking at hay stocks across the U.S. Red states were those that showed a decline from the same time, December 1. Blue showed increase. Did want to throw this out there for our peanut folks. We did see some acreage. Did want to, I think last year I did not show this price chart. But if you look at the all peanut price in December, we were at 20.4 cents a pound. Jumping quickly into poultry. This chart shows our weekly broiler placements for 2020 compared to 2019. 2020 is in the red line. 2019 is in the blue line. I certainly highlighted, you can see the bars. This is on a weekly basis. So I highlighted those gaps between March and July. Just wanted to point out, based on everything that happened, if you look into that May, June timeframe, where historically we would be placing 23, 24 plus million head of broilers a week on farms, we were down in the 19, 20 range. For those that may not know, that means those are broiler farms that aren't receiving broiler chicks. So that's certainly a huge economic impact in our poultry industry. But definitely wanted to highlight that for the year, show those things. Looking on the egg side, egg production, again, we've seen, and these eggs do include both table type eggs and hatching type eggs. In Arkansas, we're primarily a hatching type egg state, but you can certainly see the red in 2020. Once we got through the summer in June, we've seen egg production increase. The blue shows 2019. Jumping real quick to cattle, our January cattle report, we surveyed almost 700 farmers and ranchers in Arkansas, about 35,000 across the U.S. to determine cattle inventory numbers. This table will show the Arkansas on the left-hand side, the U.S. on the right side. In Arkansas, we were up about 2% over last year. Our calf crop was flat at 780,000 head from last year. We showed total cattle and calf inventories in Arkansas at 1.77 million head. And again, that was about 2% above the 1.73 from last year. At the U.S. level, the calf number, or the all cattle and calf number, was down slightly, almost flat. But we also showed that the calf crop at the U.S. level was down about 1%. Chart shows a comparison of Arkansas in the red with the U.S. in the blue. Just kind of show you the trend lines of where the cattle inventory is at. As I mentioned, Arkansas, we did see a little bit of a jump up in 21 as compared to 20. U.S. again, flat, slightly down in total. State by state, again, looking at the cattle inventory, the blue will show increases, states that had slight increases. The red, those that did show a decrease. And again, Texas is a big player at about 13 million head in the U.S. Cattle on feed, in feedlots, inventory numbers. Just wanted to show 2019 compared to 2020. In the 2019 is in the blue, the 2020 is in the red. So you can see where those cattle inventory numbers are. Basically, the December number was about flat from the previous year. Like we did on the crop side, we'll look at expectations from the industry versus the NASS report. The NASS report is the red dot. The black dot is the trade average. The gray bar shows the range, and this is looking at percent. So again, NASS, our percent change from last year was down 0.2%. The average industry was expecting it to be down 0.3. So that does show you some of the ranges. Our calf crop, we were at 98.7% from last year. The industry was expecting 99.2, or those prognosticators that were looking at it. Cattle prices, much like we did with the crops, again, showing you where we've been, where we're at. Currently, December, the all cattle price, we're looking at $108 a hundredweight. Milk, real quick, Arkansas on the top part, or the left-hand side, U.S. on the right side. In Arkansas, we've kind of held steady at about 5,000 head of dairy cattle. For the last quarter, October to December, we produced about 14 million pounds of milk. At the U.S. level, the production for that quarter was about 55.6 million pounds. Graphically showing that over time, the blue line shows the U.S. with increasing milk production just for that final quarter. Arkansas, you can certainly see where we've been. If you go back to 2010 for that last quarter, we were in the 35 or so range, 35 million pounds of milk produced. 10 years later, now we're down in the 14, 15 range. Monthly milk prices, showing you where we're at. Again, at the U.S. level, this is the all milk price, $18.50 a hundredweight. Again, showing you where we've been, where we're at. Looking at some reports that are coming up that may be of interest. Our catfish production reports, February the 8th. We'll do a farm and land and farms report the 19th. Crop values the 25th. County estimates for corn and soybeans will be released February the 25th. The 2020 bee and honey report will be March 18th. And our first glimpse and look at the 21 crop will be released at March the 31st. Certainly a lot of other reports in there. As I mentioned, we do about 500 a year. You can certainly go to our website, take a look at the calendar at all those reports. Real quick, a couple of other things, just so the board is aware. We will start data collection for prospective plantings the first 2 weeks of March. And currently the big program that we're ongoing right now is our Ag Resource Management Survey. And we'll survey farmers and ranchers across Arkansas through the end of April for that report that we do in conjunction with ERS. Real quick, the 97th Annual Ag Outlook Forum will be February the 18th and 19th. You can go to our website. There's a registration there. Take a peek. Something very, very interesting to look into. All of our reports are available on our website. My phone number, 501-217-1932. Shoot me an email, eugene.young@usda.gov. And I will extend an invitation when we open our office back up to anyone that's listening. At any time you got questions, come on, drop by. We'd be glad to visit with anyone and sit down and answer any questions you might have. So that's about as fast as I've talked in a long time, folks. So I think I've got everything. Now I've got to figure out how to get this thing back here. So I apologize. Let me see what I can do. Uh-oh, what did I do? Am I still here?
I think we still see you.
Okay, well, let me see what I can do here. Let me stop sharing. Did I stop sharing? Whoop.
I think we're back now.
We're back now? Okay, good, good.
All right, we certainly appreciate your report, very to the point and informative. Is there any questions of Eugene this morning? Hearing none, you must have done a great job.
I appreciate it, everybody.
Yes, sir. Have a great day, and thank you very much. Moving down, I'm going to slide the computer across to Mr. Secretary and let him take it from here.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that, and also appreciate having Mr. John Lewis and Eugene Young with us for the board meeting today, and do just want to start by apologizing for the technical challenges this morning. We had lost our internet access, not just here within the Department of Agriculture building, but several locations throughout Little Rock. Not sure how widespread that was, but appreciate everybody's patience and helping us get back online and get the meeting started. You know, it's I think a lot of these Zoom and team meetings have been very helpful and beneficial and easier access, but of course that's always dependent on connectivity. So when that goes down, it makes it even more challenging. So appreciate everybody joining us and your patience. Did want to provide just a few brief updates from our end. Really, you know, from our standpoint, from a department, we're always very interested in hearing y'all's thoughts and issues that y'all are dealing with throughout the state, and we want to be helpful and responsive to those in any way that we can. So if you don't get a chance to raise a question today, either to myself or any of our directors, please don't hesitate at any time to shoot us an email or give us a phone call and let us know if there's anything that we can help you with. Obviously, we're into February now, which is hard to believe. Last year was a strange and complicated and difficult year on a lot of fronts. But since that last November board meeting, has been a lot of things going on. In particular, closing out really the end of the year, a lot of reports that are required, statutorily required, that we submit. But one I did want to highlight for y'all was just the overall Department of Agriculture annual report that we've been compiling for the last couple of years now. It's about 70 pages and really covers all of our programs and services and divisions throughout the department. And we're very proud of that report. I think it gives a good indication just really on how broad and diverse the state's largest industry is, and then all that we do from a department standpoint in conjunction with the industry. So wanted to highlight that. Happy to share that with anybody that hasn't seen that. We'd be happy to send that over to you. A couple other things I did want to mention is of course that the legislative session started on January the 11th. And so we're very busy working on those ends. We had a few different proposals that we ran by the governor, really not anything controversial, but just things that needed to be updated and cleaned up to include industrial hemp, feral hogs, abandoned pesticides, livestock dealer license, carcass disposal, things of that nature that we're working with legislative members on to get moved forward. We're also, there are other things that we didn't even propose ourselves, but that we're engaged in, and one in particular is a state meat inspection program. So if you'll remember last year, we did receive about $10.4 million from the CARES Act funding for a meat and poultry processing grant. We've gotten that distributed, and I appreciate Patrick and his team on livestock and poultry for all their work on that. And this is really just the next step beyond that grant funding to initiate and begin a state meat inspection program. So several legislative members have sponsored a bill on that, and that actually comes up in front of the House Ag Committee this afternoon at 2 o'clock. So we should be able to report back to everyone soon on the status of that as it makes its way through the legislative process. A couple other quick things. Obviously, we do have a new federal administration, so that changes a lot of the people that we historically over the last 4 years have interacted with on a lot of the federal agencies. So we'll be working through some of those. One thing I did want to highlight in particular, of course, is Secretary Vilsack is nominated and made it through the Senate Ag Committee yesterday, and they're expecting confirmation of him by the end of this week. But also the Deputy Secretary is Joel Brano, who is currently the Commissioner of Agriculture in Virginia. So we have had the opportunity to work with her very closely over the last several years since she's been in that role, and excited to have her take that position at USDA. That's a face and a name that we know and we can reach out to whenever there are issues or challenges from Arkansas associated with different USDA programs. So did want to mention that, if there are things that we can do to be helpful with our federal counterparts, let us know. We'll be happy to reach out and help resolve those as best as we can. A couple last points I did want to mention is yesterday, I think that many of you were able to join us, but we did have a meeting with Arkansas Department of Health with Stephanie Williams, the Chief of Staff there, as well as Colonel Rob Ader, who was recently appointed by the governor to head up the vaccine distribution program for the state of Arkansas. I know that's something that we have received a lot of questions from the food and agricultural industry on when to expect vaccines and how that will be rolled out. So I had a meeting yesterday with them. We had over 100 people join us for that meeting with the Department of Health and Colonel Ader as they talk through the current status and what they're doing to move forward. Food and agriculture is part of that phase 1B of the vaccine distribution plan. But we haven't made it there yet, still focusing on that 70+ population, as well as people working in the education field. So one thing that they have asked us to assist with, and I did want to raise for all of you, is really helping them to identify the number of people within the food and agriculture industry to receive a vaccine, in particular who wants a vaccine. So we've seen in different areas where there may be 500,000 people in a certain population, but only 50, 60, 70% really want to get the vaccine. So we're going to do what we can to help them just refine some of those numbers. And so any feedback that y'all have from your respective industries and the constituents that you work with, please let us know how we can be helpful there. Another one that they've asked for our assistance with is with the migrant workforce within agriculture, and trying to help track that and again validate some numbers and locations as they're working forward on the vaccine distribution. Beyond that, did also want to mention the Buffalo River Conservation Committee. We've had several meetings this year. I've allocated some additional funding for some projects there to include feral hogs. So we're excited about that, excited about all the feral hog work that's going on. Very happy to have JP Fairhead serving as our feral hog coordinator and moving those efforts forward. But that is very much a partnership, the Feral Hog Eradication Task Force working with a broad range of partners to move those efforts forward. Last thing I did want to mention before we turn it over to the division directors for their updates is just that Arkansas will be hosting the SASDA, Southern Association of State Departments of Agriculture, meeting here in Arkansas in June. And that's something we've had some conversations with a few of you and have reached out on just planning for that. We're planning at this point a live in-person meeting in June here in Arkansas, going to highlight Arkansas's agriculture industry. Very excited about that. We'll have all the southern states, their commissioners, secretaries, and directors coming in, those that can anyway. We're getting some good feedback from those that will plan to be here in June. So I did just want to put that on your radar, June 5th through 9th here in Arkansas, hosting that meeting. So with that, we'll start with our division directors for some quick updates from their end, and I'll start with Mr. Joe Fox if he can join us.
Okay, I'm here and I'm guessing that y'all can hear me. With apologies, my video camera on my machine is arguing with me and doesn't want to turn on, so you don't look at me today. Sorry. I will sound like John Lewis a bit. I'm going to sound like a weather reporter, but 2020 was another wet year here. You've already heard we had the lowest number of fires in 2020, calendar year 2020, than we've ever had by a little bit. Last year set a record by a lot, and 2019 set a record by a lot, and 2020 beat that one on number of fires. But we had a few bigger fires. And 100 acres is a big fire in Arkansas. So 10,815 acres of wildfires in 2020 is the third least since we've been keeping records. We've been keeping records since about 1934, 1935. January of this year, we had a few more, closer to our average, our 10-year average, 80 fires and 1,325 acres last month, compared to 32 fires and 920 in January of 19. So we've had a little bit more, but as you know, it's really still wet. Turning to our technical assistance, 2020 was really a good year in spite of COVID-19 and social distancing. As anybody works outside knows, you can social distance pretty easily on the farm or in the forest. So we had technical assistance contacts with over 5,000 landowners representing over 400,000 acres. We wrote 1,500 management plans for about 135,000 acres. We did 147 prescribed fires for over 10,000 acres, and we pushed over 228 miles of fire lanes. So on technical assistance, we had a good year. One thing that's not going well is filling our jobs. Our turnover and retirement seems like it's skyrocketing. We have currently 255 positions filled. We have 26 vacancies, which you can tell is over 10% of our workforce, and 18 advertised. There's probably nationally and forestry community-wide, whether you're in private or public business, there are 3 jobs for every bachelor degree forester that graduates from any school, any forestry program in America. So to that end, and we talked about it at your last meeting, We've been working with Monticello, UAM, and their forestry program. We have an MOU signed with them, and Representative Ken Bragg is working on a bill with us. I was hopeful and still am hopeful it may get filed this week. If not this week, then next week, to allow us to appropriate for us a way to sponsor a scholarship each year at Monticello for a new forestry student. So ultimately, after 4 years, we would have one student sponsored in each grade. And it's we're talking about, and probably will, it'll be a $4,000 a semester scholarship for each of those students. We'll start out with one and build it up as they matriculate through school. I can't spell it, but I can say matriculate. Anyhow, that is very important to us. Recruitment and retention of staff is very big. Our forest inventory and analysis plots, which are over 4,000 plots, we survey 1/5 of those each year. We finally caught up and we finished all of our 2020 plots in 2020. Now we have to give that information to Forest Service. They analyze it, and we'll have new 2020 numbers on forest inventories very soon, but we expect that we are still way overgrowing our removals each year here in Arkansas. Last year's, the 2019 number was over 20 million tons that were growing in wood, pine and hardwood, more than we are harvesting or that's dying. That's unsustainable in the long run, but it's also a great ticket to attract business here in Arkansas. We work regularly with AEDC, Economic Development, and others to do that. Our Hot Springs Recharge area, where we're buying property, willing buyer, willing seller, is growing. We've targeted about 6,000 acres in private hands of the recharge area for the hot springs. And we own now 1,758 acres, closed on a big tract in December, or about 30% of our goal to protect the recharge area. The idea being that if you pave over the recharge area, that the hot springs could dry up or at least be very much diminished. Moving along, a couple more things. This is a John Lewis thing. Our Balcom seedling sales, our big tree nursery, seedling nursery in North Little Rock at Balcom, sales are down. And the reason they're down is because of the 2 hurricanes that devastated Louisiana in 2020. And the planters that we sell seedlings to that work in Louisiana have had to redo all of their places they were going to work and change. And so our seedling sales are down 1.8 million seedlings. We hope to recoup, but those hurricanes, which did in forestry really didn't hurt Arkansas very badly at all, have hurt us in those seedling sales. And lastly, our forest action plan we've been working on, talked to you about it, has been updated and is on our website. The forest action plan objectives for the forests of Arkansas that help us for the next 10 years as we apply for federal grants. And we're very proud of it. A lot of stakeholders contributed to it. It's a very good plan that we hope will continue to keep the forest of Arkansas resilient. Mr. Chair, that's my report for forestry.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Appreciate that. And we'll go to Bruce Holland next for natural resources.
Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year from Arkansas Natural Resources Division. Biggest thing that's happened to us since last year is in December, we moved to a new office space. So we are now out west. We had been living downtown for, gosh, I don't know how many years, but it was a big change for a lot of people here. A lot of effort went into it, when you have to move all the computer servers at the same time. And so we were moving desks and offices here. while everyone was working on a folding table or something back at the old office to wait for the computer system to be transferred over. So it was a major undertaking. Took us a month and a half, and we're still got a few little things we're working on getting settled in here. But overall, the move was really better than we expected it might be. Thought I would update you this morning on some of the progress we've made with the levees. Of course, everyone knows about the big flood that came through in 2019, caused a lot of damage to the levees across the state. And so the governor put some money aside, and we distributed that money to 16 different projects down the Arkansas River. And there are all at various levels of completion. There are 2 that are complete right now, and those 2 are Tupelo Bayou and the Dardanelle Drainage District. Those have been completed. Others are at various stages of, some have got some of the dirt work done, waiting on pipes. Some are still in the engineering process. And so we're still working with those folks actively and making sure that they have everything they need to move forward. And with that said, in the legislature, as a result of the governor's task force, 3 bills have come out of that. And those 3 bills are one of them simplifies the process by which they can merge levee districts so that if some of them are in a system, they can all get together and function as one. Some of it is to remove some of the limitations that they used to have for setting their assessments, so they can vote to raise that. I think the old standard was like 25 cents an acre in some cases. And so they're raising that up and just making it easier for these levee districts to do what they need to do to be active and to get back into the Corps' RIP program. And I'll echo Joe's comments too. Joe mentioned that he had about 10% openings at his division. We've had 10% give notice since the first of the year that they're moving on to other jobs. You know, a lot of our challenges in the Department of Agriculture is we just don't have the ability to pay enough. And so sometimes we get people in here fresh out of college, we train them a little bit, they get up and going, and they've got other opportunities open for them then. So that's a challenge for us, but that's something that we will get through. We'll get some more people hired, and we'll be back at full staff, I'm sure. So, Mr. Chairman, that is my report, unless there's any questions.
All right, thanks, Bruce. And we'll go next to Scott Bray for Plant Industry Division.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and good morning, everybody. I'll go ahead and start my report with the subject that plant industry seems to be talked about the most, and that's dicamba. As most of you know, back in the summer, the EPA vacated the label for 3 of the 4 products labeled for over-the-top use over beans and cotton. In November, I believe it was, they relabeled, for lack of a better word, those 3 products. So, excuse me, Arkansas farmers and farmers nationally have available to them 3 or 4 different dicamba related products for over-the-top use in beans and cotton. When they did relabel the products, they minimally tweaked the label requirements, I'll say. Our board met in December, and as you know, Arkansas has probably the most restrictive dicamba regulations in the country, and our board opted not to change our regulations other than addressing a special permit behind the Mississippi River levee. Basically, we've allowed that in the past. That permit in the past, the language read something to the effect that you could use those products 45 days after planting. I think it was beans and maybe 60-something days after planting cotton. I don't remember exactly. But the new change will just simply line up with a label and give a June 30 cutoff for beans and I think a July 30 cutoff for cotton on lands east of the Mississippi River levee. Now, outside of that levee system, the cutoff remains at May 25th, and our large 1 mile and half-mile buffers remain in place. Some of the numbers associated with pesticide complaints and dicamba, they have stayed pretty steady the last 3 years, trended up just a little bit in 2020, In 2018, we recorded a total of 456 complaints. 200 of that were alleged dicamba. Coincidentally, in 2019, we recorded 456 total again. 210 of that were alleged dicamba. And in 2020, staff recorded 514 total pesticide complaints, 217 of which were dicamba. We have also just this weekend, Sunday actually, received a petition for rulemaking. Our board received that. And the petitioner is requesting that the board enter into rulemaking and withdraw the Arkansas restrictions and basically just line up Arkansas regulations with the federal. The board has 30 days to hear that petition and make a decision on it. So we're in the process right now of scheduling that meeting. Our next scheduled board meeting is March the 3rd, and that falls just right there at the very end of that 30-day requirement from receiving that petition. So the chairman and the board, they may decide to meet and discuss this petition sooner than March 3rd. Moving on to other programs, you know, we have our abandoned pesticide program, one of the premier programs we operate. Since 2005, that program has collected and removed from our environment over 5 million pounds of old pesticide products. In 2020 alone, this last year, we held 10 collection events and removed over 580,000 pounds. The funding for this program was established in 2005 through legislation, and it's a fixed amount on pesticide registration. And I think that was at $50. So over the years, as you can imagine, the cost of operating the program has gone up, and we've experienced a little bit of funding issues with that program. And as an advisory board, we are currently exploring all options. We're looking into potentially some grants that will match some of our funds. And we're also discussing maybe proposing some legislation that will allow us to raise that pesticide registration fee. As of right now, that we don't have anything sponsored or anything in motion legislatively. Another program I want to highlight is the peanut grading. That has grown substantially in the last few years. For many years, we operated just 2 buying points. And in the last couple of years, that's doubled. We now, in 2020, provided grading services for 4 buying points. One is located in Portia, and that is with the Birdsong Peanut Group. The other 3, one is in Pocahontas, and that is associated with the Delta Peanut Group. Another one is in Marianna. It's also associated with Delta. And then one in Jonesboro that's associated with Delta. And in addition to the buying points in Jonesboro, associated with the Delta Group is a sheller plant that it has been operational for a couple months now. It continues as they operate and continue to catch bugs and work out bugs to expand and grow. Right now, it's running on a pretty normal Monday through Friday schedule, but it's anticipated to eventually go to probably a 7-day a week, maybe 12 on 2 shift schedule. In the 2020 season, we saw about 55,000 acres of peanuts grown in the state, and we're expecting that to increase 6 to 8% in 2021. Additionally, there is discussion of another buying point being built in the Boot Hill of Missouri. Missouri does not have a grading program. They're in discussion with USDA as to whether they want to enter into an agreement and build, for lack of a better word, a USDA peanut grading program. If they do not, USDA has approached us and asked if we would run that buying point and provide that grading service. And we have agreed to do that. So if Missouri determines it's not in their best interest or they don't have resources, we may be providing services to that buying point in the Boot Hill as well. Our hemp program, it's a evolving program. It's transitioning federally and at the state from research to more of a commercial. USDA has completely changed and revamped the program from a federal standpoint. So we are looking at changes here in the state of Arkansas. Last year, we had 121 growers, 30 something processors licensed. We approved 2,300 acres for growing. 734 acres were planted, and of that, 557 were harvested. It is a struggling industry right now in Arkansas. It's brand new. I don't think any of them, very few of them, are making any money, but it does have some potential for growth. And we do anticipate that program growing in the future. Another program I'll just mention is our boll weevil eradication. It's one of our more very successful programs. This year, there was almost 500,000 acres of cotton assessed at $3 an acre. That brought 1.5 million into the program. That program over the last several years experiences pretty much 100% collection. Those cotton farmers are very cooperative with the program. They understand the value of it. They appreciate that the boll weevil has been eradicated. And I think they appreciate that this program maintains monitoring to keep the boll weevil eradicated. The last few years, after after assessments are collected and the program basically looks at its books, has been able to rebate back to the growers $1 per acre of that $3 collected. So we'll see if that occurs again this year. I would not be surprised if it does not. And with that, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Chairman, that sums up my report, unless anybody has any questions.
Okay, well, thanks, Scott. Appreciate that update. And the last report will go to Patrick Fisk for Livestock and Poultry Division.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Just give you an update on where we reported last on our grants, whether it be USDA or our CARES Act. The population or depopulation for our poultry program, we were awarded $50,000 for that. Everything has been purchased in-house. We started this week in assembling our second farming machine, which will provide some additional assistance in case of an outbreak. As the Secretary mentioned, the meat and process grant facility, the $10 million that we awarded that to 31 processing facilities. Most facilities will be operational this spring. And one of those that were awarded has already received their USDA grant of inspection or their certification. So that brings a total of 4 USDA inspected plants here in Arkansas. In our last meeting, I mentioned that we had applied for the National Animal Disease Preparedness Program, or NADPRAP. We did get that award, which equaled about, or just shy of $134,000. That's going to be dedicated to our large animal depopulation, and in the event of a disease outbreak such as African swine fever or foot and mouth disease. And then in cases of any catastrophic events such as a natural disaster. In going to their animal health, last year or the last meeting, we had reported some challenges with equine industry with vesicular stomatis. There are no cases in Arkansas currently, nor are there in any neighboring states. That was a lot of effort went into that, containing that disease. So kudos and hats off to our team for containing that. I think they did a very good job. On the poultry side, we have some challenges in our mycoplasma with our backyard flocks. We have some MS or MG flocks that we have depopulated at this point. MS flocks are under quarantine currently. And on the commercial side, they've also had some challenges this year with respiratory diseases. However, they have band together and are working together and are controlling those diseases through controlled marketing, treatment, or through a vaccination program. On the cattle side, health, we have been seeing an increase in yawnings and anaplasmosis or anaplasma. And about average is in regards to the leukemia and trichomoniasis. And just talk a little bit about trich. Trich has been pretty tricky, and of course that pun is intended, because that disease is one of those diseases where the numbers really don't support the problem itself. Trich numbers in Arkansas are pretty low. But when we see positives, there's a much larger impact to the herd itself than what the numbers show. So what we did this past quarter is we have put in place an SOP, or standard operating procedure, on trich, as well as putting together a herd health plan. Each one of those plans are unique to that premises, and that managers how he manages his herd. And that is mainly for those herds that have been exposed to a trich positive bull, which I mentioned do have a huge impact on percentage of calving for that particular premise. Right now, we have 3 individuals that are underneath that program. We do have some success with one of those. The plans right now from veterinarian and from the producer's perspective are working very well. One of those were just pregnancy tested this last week. All cows were pregnant, and we expect better than average calf crop for this year. As far as cattle sales, they were pretty steady in November of this last quarter, in December, or just a little bit of a downtick in December. But overall, for 2020, we sold around 504,000 cows, which is a little below average from what we normally do, but we really, between 550,000 to 600,000 is generally what we average for the year. On the poultry side of things, we did have a pretty tough December and November in terms of our staff. It was a very good year for the industry in terms of relating to COVID and the challenges that they faced in March. But that time period is a heavy time period for seasonal activities. So Cargill was very far behind. We were working 12-hour shifts 7 days a week just to keep up. But we're back to normal now, and kudos, hats off to them as well. They worked really hard during that time period. And then last, I'll wrap it up with our NPIP program. We had some issues last year with antigen shortage. The one and only factory of that antigen was closed down, and it affected our recertifications for our NPIP participants, as well as our FFA and 4-H owners. This year, we are getting more of those antigens, so we're reducing or increasing how many we're getting right now. So I think we'll be pretty good this year in regards to shows, and try to get everybody, the NPIP participants, back recertified. Another thing in NPIP, this year we're launching a new data entry system. This system now will give the companies an opportunity to enter their testing results online, as opposed to sending it via email. This will reduce our administration time considerably, and it will also allow our companies to track their own results as well as their own flock records. So staying extremely busy, making a lot of progress, and making our programs much more efficient. So with that, that's all I've prepared to speak about today. If I have any questions.
Okay, well, thanks, Patrick. Appreciate that update, and all of our division directors for all that they're doing. Very busy throughout the department. Very busy industry, as our state's largest industry. Always a lot going on. So appreciate the opportunity to provide those updates today, and I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. Item number 7 is we've completed. Moving on to item 8. Board expenses for the 21 calendar year. Who's gonna handle that?
So Anissa, I think Anissa may be on.
Anissa, you on?
Anissa or Wade, maybe.
or Wade?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. State law requires that boards and commissions on the first regularly scheduled meeting of each calendar year vote to receive any stipend that is designated in statute and vote to receive the mileage reimbursement that board members are entitled to. So we would just need a vote to accomplish those expense payments and reimbursements to the board members.
Okay. Thank you very much, Wade, for explanation of that. I do think that we have obtained a quorum, so I would entertain a motion to approve board expenses for 2021.
So moved.
Got a motion from Kyle, second.
Chris Kaufman, I'll second.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. All right, I think that brings us down to the end of our agenda today. I certainly want to thank everyone for taking time out of their schedules and joining us here in spite of our connectivity issues. I think we had a great meeting. And as Wes said, if you've got any questions as we move into the new year, starting our planning season, or some of the issues that may arise just east of here on the hill in the next few weeks, please reach out to them. And they'll be certainly happy to help you or do their best to explain our position or anything that's in question regarding legislative issues that deal with agriculture. Any other business? With no business, additional business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make that motion.
Make that motion, Will Brewer.
Okay.
Frank, let's go second.
Got a motion and a second. Again, thank y'all, and all in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye.
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 Y'all have a great week.
But